So people want to call this a collection of buckets. Yeah, they're just hallucinating at this point. Oh, it's just buckets, guys. Oh yeah, of course, man. That is not necessary. Even radix sort is not necessary, which is also being mentioned in the comments. That is not necessary. As long as your array is relatively linear in scale, and even if it isn't, you can still turn everything to a line. But basically from 0 to max, as long as you define the range of numbers, you will be able to know relatively where those numbers fall, in which place. And yes, technically this is not really a comparison sorting, where things smash into each other and have to be compared. Every single element has to be compared. It's different. But for people to give me the bucket sort idea and be like, hey, it's just like this thing. Yeah, the computer is a bucket, my brain is a bucket, anything that holds information is a bucket, except this, because, holy shit, there's no separations going on here. We're just literally throwing things onto the line where they're supposed to go. From the array, right? It's linearly bam, 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 just raining down. It's kind of like a spray sorting, I would call it that. But we decided it's going to be SWIFTIE sort, because it's such a simple concept, anyone can do it, and I've never heard of it before. You know? I heard of like quicksort, but like, how do you do quicksort? I guess I don't know. I heard of merge sort, and then like, I don't know how to do merge sort. I know how to do bubble sort. This is where I started. I knew how to do bubble sort, and this is why we ended up with bubble sort here. And I literally haven't learned a single sorting system until people started fucking complaining of like, oh, it looks like this and like that and like this and like that. Just started hallucinating, basically. And again, they bring up radix, which is such a weird system already when you try to explain it, of like, oh, there can be like different numbers here, and it will check the first digit, and then sort by the first, then it will sort by the second digit. And then someone try to, you know, save the day and be like, oh my god, guys, there is most significant digits radix sort. So MSD radix. Holy shit, what? So we just put a few more letters in and we're good, right? Now we just start sorting by the largest digit, which is a little bit less cringe, but still kind of weird, man. It's still weird. I tested my system is just as quick or even faster than quicksort. So we're on the right track. Huh? Don't we agree on that? If it's quicker and it's also very easy to implement, this is why we're gonna call it SWIFTIE sort. You can quickly learn this, feel no mercy basically on people who will tell you like you have to do this and that. Just feel no mercy, feel full narcissism when this comes down. All right, when you're learning this, when you're watching this video, you're better than everyone else. That's what SWIFTIE sort is. Alright, you're just better than everyone else. This is not a fucking bucket, because it's just one thing that holds information. That would be called an array or a list. This happens to be a list of things, right? A list of buckets? No, a list of elements. Let's not hallucinate, guys. Let's not just put a bunch of barriers and be like, oh, now it's buckets. You can call it a pool of information. Pool of information because it's filled with water, filled with space, so it doesn't move around too much. When we add an element, it's not like the only element in the list. It's just going to be in a certain position in the pool. When we drain the pool, however, everything kind of crams together nicely. And now we have this like linear, progressive array that's also clean. And then we just double check. Not with bubble sort anymore. I have implemented Insertion Sort, which is actually a little bit smaller. It takes 2 lines for me. And actually a very, very simple idea as well. Once it loads, of course. This is insertion sorts. 2 lines of code. Wow. Again, this happens after the pool is drained, the sort ends. This is the draining of the pool. And this is the insertion sort. It's just 3 lines. It's not that fucking complicated. And the insertion sort, to remind how it works, in my words, because I'm a fucking smart dude, worst case scenario with insertion sort, you're gonna have a roadblocker that's gonna have to jump a lot of values across itself. How does that work? So first we, one element at a time we go forward, right? And when we encounter an error, a question mark, of like, why is this value smaller? Okay, let the smaller value go down a little bit and eventually, like, it's great, right? But at some point, that can be a roadblocker that just start killing the road. Of like, this gotta go down, this gotta go down, this gotta go down. That's the worst case scenario. I don't think it happens that often in my case, but it's just the worst case scenario that could happen with insertion sort that you need to know to be able to avoid, or what would make it last very long. So the roadblockers could start stacking together, and you have to jump over 3 values and all that shit until you reach the end, and everything is fairly sorted, as long as you don't have to throw the value bam, 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 check a bunch of things until it falls down. Then you're good. As long as the range is not like this, and relatively linear, just with a few inconsistencies, then insertion sort is actually very, very fast. And in the most literal sense, it will go like this and be like, oh, we found a number that's smaller than this, and smaller than this, but bigger than this, so we're going to insert it over here. That's what it means. It actually contains the word insertion, my friends. It's crazy, I know. My sorting system is not a fucking bucket sort because it doesn't contain a bucket in a way that would define the entire thing. You know, in the bucket sort system, the reason why it's called bucket sort, you sort things into buckets, then sort the buckets, then stitch buckets together. That's not what I'm doing. I'm throwing things into the pool, drain the pool, things are relatively sorted, and the insertion sort finishes the job by fixing the errors and inconsistencies. Very tiny things, like maybe 500 inconsistencies are in there. Fixed. Bam, slam. It's fairly easy to do A to Z sorting, or A to ZZ. You literally have the max value of ZZ and everything is like linear. Super cool. But sometimes things are not going to be linear. And I'm just going to remind you guys how to convert logarithmic thing into a line. Right? It just simply looks like this. It's going to go from 1 to 10. You can think of it as a bucket, but it's more of a range. Alright? And then could go to 100 and 1,000. These are ranges of numbers. How would you turn it into a line? Well, it's a logarithmic scale. Once you remove the logarithm, all of a sudden it's a line again. Great. But for every single situation is going to be different, right? Based on the distributions, if it's not a linear distribution of numbers, if you have more numbers in this range, which I do, I have a lot of numbers in this range specifically, could make things complicated. You might want to give 20% of space instead of like 10% of space. You can manipulate things, but yeah, that's the whole goal of just turning things into a line, into a progressive line, and then it's a smooth sailing from here. Because the more cramming you're gonna have, is the more errors in one place there's gonna be. Which potentially is not a big deal at all. potentially still going to be completely fine. Or you just add a fucking more water into the pool, and you're going to be fine as well. Because more water is actually easy to drain water and add water, so no big deal. Whichever way you want to solve things, whichever way you want to optimize things, this is just optimization, and does not matter much at all. So I'm hoping people will stop saying bucket sort, stealing the water from my pool. That's illegal. Bringing up the cringe erratic sort because it looks pretty cringe in every single way. Alright, I still don't know how to implement this. I don't really know how to implement bucket sort because arrays are finite size. How do you create a bucket array? How many elements a bucket is supposed to be able to hold? What are we talking about? Right? This is scary. Arrays are scary when there's undefined need for an array. Like, you might need to put 6 elements into an array, but you only have space for 5. And you're fucking screwed now. This is the reason why I don't use bucket sort. Is like, holy shit, this gives me brain damage. We're using too many arrays at the same time. No, that's not what it is. It's a very, very freeing and simple sorting system. And I'm just like super glad, because merge sort is pretty complicated, and then quick sort is completely unknown for me. Like, how the fuck it even works, I don't know. And bucket sort clearly doesn't work in my brain yet. No one even explained it properly. Good luck with that, because I don't even think it's faster. When it comes to this, I think it scales pretty well. The ON notation, the scaling question, I mean, I'm already using 1,000 elements. This probably scales pretty well. I don't know how much space you need to hold water, and you don't need that much water anyways. All these elements gonna turn into water themselves pretty much, as long as they're somewhat relatively normally distributed, right? Randomly distributed. Because if you start pouring a bunch of numbers here, it's gonna shift things around a little bit. It can create more errors, but even then, it's like whatever, right? It might start creating a worst case scenario, the tsunami, bro, where there's so much stuff going on here. But it's just like, let's not dive into that, because that's not what happens in most cases. In most cases, it's gonna have control over the data set that you're working with. And I don't want to create boogeyman in this case. And yeah, oh, this guy was reinventing the wheel too, of course, and nobody liked him. Because it's like, oh, nobody liked the dude that invented light bulbs because we have candles, of course. Like, I don't know what kind of arguments you can come up with, but I'm already upset. Say something nicer than that. Then just try to, you know, fight against whatever the fuck I'm doing. Like, show me a YouTube video that explains the same exact concept to same exact level. You know, why is it not just easier to assume that as we go into the future, more and more people are going to discover better and better things? How about that for, you know, reasoning? See you guys next time. I haven't seen a single song that is 2 characters long, bro. You just type in 22 and it's all sorted, guys. And guess what happens in the music video? See? That's what I'm talking about. You jump in the pool and you get sorted. Show me 2 peace signs if you have been sorted, Taylor. See? We got it, bro.